Grand Admiral Vexthor stood at the command deck of the Xerxian Empire's flagship, the Eternal Dominance, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft purple light of the bridge displays. His compound eyes studied the holographic representation of the newly discovered human fleet with barely concealed disdain. After 8 centuries of expanding the Xerxian Empire's influence across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, he had grown accustomed to seeing inferior vessel designs from emerging species. High Commander, called out strategic analyst Zira, her antennae twitching with concern. Preliminary scans of the human vessels show unusual characteristics. Their power distribution networks appear decentralized. Vexthor clicked his mandibles in amusement. Primitive attempts at innovation. No doubt a result of their limited understanding of proper starship engineering. He had overseen the integration of 17 different species into the Empire. And each time, their crude vessels had proved no match for Xerxian superiority. The human ships hung in the void ahead of them, their designs a stark contrast to the sleek, crystalline architecture of the Xerxian fleet, where imperial vessels were elegant spires of living crystal, powered by singular, mighty fusion cores. The human ships appeared ungainly, their hulls studded with what seemed to be redundant systems and multiple smaller power signatures. "My lord," Zira persisted, "the Ministry of Technology Assessment has flagged several concerns. These vessels appear to operate on principles that contradict our fundamental understanding of efficient design. They're suggesting we delay engagement until..." Enough. Vexthor's carapace flushed deep purple with irritation. "I will not have bureaucrats questioning military doctrine that has served us for millennia. These humans will learn their place, just as all others have." The diplomatic channel crackled to life, and a human face appeared on the main display. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Resilient. We acknowledge your presence in this sector and are open to peaceful dialogue." Vexthor chittered softly. Their language was as inelegant as their ships. "I am Grand Admiral Vexthor of the Eternal Dominance. Your species has been granted the honor of joining the Xerxian Empire. Power down your vessels and prepare for integration." The human captain's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried a note of warning. "Admiral, we've studied the history of your expansions. We have no interest in submission. Our vessels and crews are prepared for any contingency. We strongly recommend diplomatic discourse instead of conflict." The bridge crew's antennae twitched in synchronized amusement. Such bravado was common among species who had yet to witness true Xerxian might. "Strategic analysis," Vexthor called out, "detail the primary weaknesses of their vessel design." Zira hesitated before responding. "My lord, we're having difficulty identifying primary systems to target. Their power grid appears to be a network of interconnected smaller reactors rather than a central core. Weapons systems are distributed across multiple hardpoints with overlapping fields of fire. Even their life support appears to run on redundant." "Irrelevant," Vexthor interrupted. "No design based on redundancy can match the pure efficiency of our crystalline ships. Begin the integration protocol." The Xerxian fleet moved with practiced precision, their formation a perfect geometric pattern optimized over centuries of military doctrine. Particle lances charge, their crystal focusing arrays humming with power. "Final warning, Admiral," Captain Chen's voice came through again. "Our ships are designed to survive far worse than you're preparing to deliver. We've adapted our technology based on centuries of warfare among ourselves. Every system has a backup, and every backup has a backup. We don't build ships with single points of failure." Vexthor raised his primary limb, preparing to give the order to fire. "Your primitive redundancies are no match for..." "Sir." Zira's voice cut through his speech, panic evident in her harmonic tones. "The human vessels, they're altering their power signatures. Each ship is cycling through different shield frequencies. They're generating later defensive fields." Before Vexthor could respond, the human ships began to move. But instead of the crude, predictable maneuvers he expected, they flowed like water, each vessel covering the others in an interlocking dance that defied tactical analysis. His compound eyes struggled to track the efficiency of their movement. Multiple weapon signatures detected, the tactical officer announced, his carapace paling. They're not simply redundant systems. Each weapon appears to operate on different principles. Energy weapons, kinetic accelerators, gravitational distorters. Vexthor's confidence wavered for the first time in centuries. The elegant simplicity of Zrixian design had always prevailed, but as he watched the human ships move with devastating unpredictability, a terrible thought occurred to him. Perhaps elegance wasn't everything. "Sir," Zura's voice was barely a whisper, "they're not just surviving our scans, they're adapting to them. Each time we probe their defenses, they shift configurations. It's as if every failure scenario we've never planned for," Vexthor finished, his pride finally giving way to understanding. They've already experienced and overcome. The human ships had finished their deployment, forming a three-dimensional web of overlapping fields of fire. Captain Chen's face appeared one final time on the display. "Admiral Vexthor, we've completed our combat formation. Your scans have given us a clear understanding of your capabilities. I ask one final time, will you engage in diplomatic discussion, or will you force us to demonstrate why human ships are built the way they are?" Standing there, watching the seemingly chaotic but perfectly coordinated movements of the human fleet, Grand Admiral Vexthor made the first wise decision of his long career. He chose to listen. Despite Grand Admiral Vexthor's reluctant decision to open diplomatic channels, not all elements within the Zrixian Empire shared his newfound caution. Fleet Commander Ixtal, leading the Empire's 3rd Expeditionary Force, saw the Admiral's restraint as weakness. Approaching the Proxima Centauri system with 30 of the Empire's finest crystalline warships, he intended to prove that traditional Zrixian military doctrine would prevail over human engineering principles. The human defense fleet at Proxima consisted of just 12 vessels, each different in design from the others. Leading them was the EDF Marathon, under the command of Admiral Helena Santos. As the Zrixian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, their crystal ships forming a perfect geometric attack pattern, Santos watched with practiced calm. "They're exactly as intelligence described," she commented to her XO, Commander David Chen. "Beautiful ships, elegant design, and absolutely no redundancy. Status of our response units." Chen checked his displays, where each of Marathon's subsystems reported independently. All defensive clusters showing green. Power distribution networks operating at optimal efficiency. Drone swarms armed and ready. The fleet is reporting similar status. All ships prepared for autonomous operation if needed. The Zrixian communication burst came as expected. Fleet Commander Ixtal's crystalline face filled the main screen, his mandibles arranged in what passed for a condescending smile among his species. "This is your opportunity to surrender. Your dozen vessels cannot hope to match our superior numbers and technology." Santos didn't bother responding to the ultimatum. Instead, she opened a channel to her fleet. "Remember your training. They're expecting us to fight like they do, to try matching their formation with our own. Let's show them how humans really wage war. Initiate Operation Hydra." The human ships broke formation, each vessel moving in what appeared to be random directions. To the Zrixian tactical officers, it looked like chaos, a desperate scatter in the face of superior forces. Ixtal chittered in satisfaction. As expected, they'd break formation at the first sign of real opposition, target their dispersed ships and— "Sir," his sensor officer interrupted, "the human vessels. They're deploying something. Hundreds, thousands of small objects." The space between the fleets came alive with swarms of autonomous drones, each no larger than a shuttle, but powered by the same distributed systems as their parent ships. The Zrixian formation, optimized for engaging capital ships with their particle lances, suddenly found themselves facing a cloud of targets their weapons weren't designed to track. "Irrelevant," Ixtal declared. "Maintain formation." Their drones cannot penetrate our crystalline shields. Press the attack. But the drones weren't attacking, at least not directly. Instead, they created a complex web of electronic warfare nodes, their overlapping fields playing havoc with the carefully calibrated sensors of the Xerxian fleet. The crystalline ships, dependent on precise power harmonics, began experiencing cascading disruptions. Multiple shield fluctuations, the Xerxian tactical officer reported, his antennae twitching in distress. The drones, they're not just jamming our sensors. They're analyzing our shield frequencies, probing for. The first human attack came not from energy weapons or kinetic strikes, but from within the Xerxian formation itself. Dozens of drones, having used the electronic chaos to slip through shields calibrated to stop capital ship weapons, attached themselves to the crystal hulls. Each drone began emitting precisely calculated resonance frequencies. Hull integrity compromised on vessels 7 through 15, the tactical officer shouted. The drones, they're matching our crystal matrix frequencies. Santos watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 complete, she noted. Begin Phase 2. Show them why we build our ships the way we do. The human fleet, having completed their scattered deployment, now began to move with purpose. Each ship activated different weapon systems, creating a devastating crossfire, where the Xerxian ships relied on their particle lances. Elegant but predictable in their attack patterns, the human vessels unleashed a dizzying array of weapons. Gravitational distorters created shear zones in the crystal hulls. Electromagnetic pulses disrupted power distribution. Kinetic accelerators targeted structural weaknesses identified by the drone swarms. Impossible. Ixtal raged as his perfect formation began to break apart. Their weapons, each ship is using different attack vectors. There's no pattern, no logic to their assault. There's logic, his strategic officer corrected, but not the kind we're used to. Every human ship operates independently, adapting its attack based on real-time battle damage assessment. They're not following a predetermined doctrine. They're evolving their tactics as they fight. The battle reached its turning point when the marathon demonstrated why human ships carried such extensive backup systems. Hit by a lucky shot from a Xerxian particle lance, the ship's main power grid went dark. In any Imperial vessel, this would have meant certain defeat. Instead, within seconds, secondary and tertiary systems came online. The marathon didn't just survive. It maintained full combat effectiveness. How? Ixtal demanded as he watched the supposedly crippled vessel continue fighting. Their main power should be. They don't have a main power system, his engineer explained, mandibles trembling. Everything in their ships is distributed, interconnected. We're not fighting 12 ships, sir. We're fighting 12 collections of redundant systems, each capable of operating independently. The battle ended not with a dramatic final explosion, but with the systematic dismantling of the Xerxian fleet. Crystal ships, their elegant designs unable to adapt to the chaos of human warfare, fell one by one to the combined assault of drones and capital ships. Those that survived found their communications compromised, their sensors blinded, and their tactical doctrine useless against an enemy that refused to fight according to the established rules of space combat. Fleet Commander Ixtal, watching his formation crumble around him, finally understood the warning that Grand Admiral Vex Thor had tried to convey. The humans hadn't built their ships with redundant systems out of ignorance or inefficiency. They'd done it because they understood something the Xerxian Empire had forgotten over millennia of unopposed expansion. In real warfare, survival matters more than elegance. As the last Imperial ships retreated in disarray, Admiral Santos opened a channel to her fleet. Well done, everyone. Let's get damage control teams deployed and begin recovery operations. And send word to Earth. Tell them the Proxima Defense Force just proved why human ships are unlike any others in the galaxy. The Battle of Proxima would go down in history not just as a decisive victory, but as the day the galaxy learned that humanity's approach to shipbuilding wasn't primitive or inefficient. It was the product of hard-learned lessons about the true nature of warfare. The age of elegant crystalline ships was over. The era of human engineering had begun. News of the Battle of Proxima spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. The Zrixian Empire's carefully maintained image of technological superiority crumbled as footage of their shattered crystal ships reached every corner of known space. But it wasn't just the military implications that captivated the galactic community. It was the fundamental philosophy behind human engineering that sparked a revolution. In the prestigious halls of the Galactic Engineering Academy on Centauri Prime, Professor Ixel, a reformed Zrixian engineer, stood before a mixed audience of species. Her crystalline form caught the light as she gestured to the holographic display showing the schematics of a human cargo vessel. For millennia, she began, her translator conveying the harmonic undertones of her native speech. We assumed that engineering elegance meant singular, powerful systems. The humans have proven this assumption not just wrong, but dangerously inadequate. The hologram shifted, revealing layers of interconnected systems within the human ship. Representatives from 24 species leaned forward, their various sensory organs fixed on the display. Among them sat Raxforn, a Tellaric shipwright whose people had long chafed under Zrixian technical dominance. But surely, he called out, his facial tentacles twitching with curiosity, the energy cost of maintaining multiple redundant systems is offset by the practical benefits, interrupted Dr. Sarah Chen, the human representative who had once commanded the Resilient. Now she served as humanity's technical liaison to the galactic community. We learned this lesson through centuries of warfare and exploration. A ship with backup systems might cost more to build and maintain, but it's worthless if a single critical failure leaves your crew stranded in deep space. The revolution wasn't limited to academic discussions. In shipyards across the galaxy, vessels under construction underwent radical redesigns. The Andorian Shipwrights Guild, famous for their atmospheric processors, began incorporating distributed air recycling systems. Valaxian weapons manufacturers, studying footage from Proxima, developed modular defense arrays that could adapt to different combat scenarios. The Zrixian Empire watched these developments with growing alarm. High Counselor Vexera, addressing the Imperial Senate, warned of the dangers. These human principles threaten the very foundation of our technological superiority. Their chaos spreads like a virus, corrupting the elegant designs we've perfected over millennia. But even within the Empire, change was inevitable. Junior engineers, inspired by human success, began secretly incorporating redundant systems into their designs. When an Imperial cruiser survived a catastrophic power failure thanks to an unauthorized backup generator, the debate could no longer be contained. In the Orion sector, the merchant vessel Star Wanderer demonstrated the practical advantages of human engineering philosophy. When pirates attacked a ship, expecting an easy target, they found themselves facing a vessel that could lose multiple systems without compromising its defensive capabilities. The incident was recorded and went viral across galactic networks, further cementing humanity's reputation. Dr. Chen, speaking at a technical symposium on Mars, addressed representatives from across known space. The principle isn't just about redundancy, she explained, gesturing to the massive engineering bay behind her, where ships of various species underwent retrofitting. It's about adaptation and survival. Every species faces different challenges. The key is building systems that can evolve and persist despite those challenges. The implications extended beyond shipbuilding. The Regelian Medical Consortium began applying human engineering principles to their life support systems. The Centaurian Agriculture Guild revolutionized their hydroponics by implementing distributed growth chambers. Even the notoriously conservative Vulcan Science Academy admitted that human methods showed fascinating practical advantages. But perhaps the most significant change came from an unexpected quarter. Young Zrixian engineers, led by Professor Ixel's prodigy Zextor, began a movement called the New Wave. They proposed a fusion of traditional Zrixian crystalline technology with human redundancy principles. Imagine, Zextor declared at a controversial presentation, crystal ships that maintain their efficiency, but can adapt and survive like human vessels. We don't need to abandon our heritage to embrace progress. The first hybrid vessel, the Dawn's Resilience, launched from the Xerxian shipyards amid much debate. Its crystal hull contained networks of interconnected smaller power cores rather than a single central reactor. Backup systems were elegantly integrated into the crystalline structure, maintaining aesthetic beauty while providing practical redundancy. When the Dawn's Resilience survived an encounter with a quantum storm that would have shattered a traditional Imperial vessel, even the staunchest critics of human engineering had to take notice. The ship not only survived but adapted its crystal matrix to better resist future storms, a perfect fusion of Xerxian and human principles. Dr. Chen, watching the hybrid ship dock at Earth's orbital station, smiled at Professor Ixel. "Your students have done something remarkable," she said. "They've proven that progress doesn't mean abandoning tradition. It means building upon it." Ixel's crystalline form shifted in what humans had learned to recognize as agreement. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson humanity has taught us. True elegance isn't about simplicity or complexity. It's about survival and adaptation. The engineering revolution continued to spread, transforming not just technology, but the very way species thought about design and functionality. Humanity's practical approach to survival, born from centuries of warfare and hardship, was reshaping galactic civilization, and it was becoming clear that this transformation couldn't be stopped. Not by conservative elements in the Xerxian Empire, not by traditional engineering doctrine, and not by the weight of millennia of established practice. As ships of all species began incorporating these new principles, a saying spread through the galaxy's engineering academies: "Build not for elegance alone, but for the 1,000 ways things can go wrong." It was a testament to humanity's lasting influence on galactic technology and a promise of more innovations to come. In the secure briefing chamber of Earth Fleet Command, Admiral Helena Santos stood before a holographic display of what appeared to be the simplest human ships ever designed. The gathered admirals and captains murmured in confusion at the bare-bones vessels rotating before them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Santos began, a subtle smile playing at her lips, "what you're looking at is Operation Checkmate. While the Xerxian Empire has been frantically adapting to our distributed systems approach, we've been developing something they'll never expect: ships that appear to have no redundancy at all." Commander Chen, now her senior tactical officer, activated a secondary display showing the Xerxian Empire's latest defensive formations. "Our intelligence indicates they've completely reorganized their tactics around countering our typical approach. They're expecting complex, redundant systems and adaptive warfare." The new human vessels, designated the Trojan class, looked almost primitive compared to standard Earth ships. Their hulls were smooth, with minimal external features and what appeared to be single-core power systems. To any Xerxian scanner, they would appear to be a massive step backward in human engineering. "The beauty of Operation Checkmate," Santos continued, "isn't in what these ships appear to be, but in what they actually are. We're going to use the Empire's own assumptions against them." Deep within the supposedly simple hulls of the Trojan ships lay humanity's most advanced technology yet. Instead of multiple visible backup systems, these vessels housed quantum-linked power networks that existed partially in subspace, invisible to conventional scanners. Their weapons weren't distributed across the hull. They were integrated into the very structure of the ships, using the entire vessel as one massive weapon system. "The Xerxians have spent the last year learning to counter our obvious redundancies," Chen explained. "They've developed tactics to overwhelm multiple systems simultaneously, to bypass our distributed defenses. But they've never faced anything like this." The first phase of Operation Checkmate began 3 months later. A fleet of 30 Trojan-class ships approached the Xerxian border defense network near the Arcturus sector. As predicted, the Imperial response was immediate and overwhelming. The Xerxians, confident in their new anti-human tactics, deployed their entire 7th Fleet. Fleet Commander Zelfor, veteran of a dozen engagements against human forces, studied the approaching ships with satisfaction. Finally, he chittered to his bridge crew. They've admitted the superiority of simplified design. Prepare to show them why centralized power systems never worked against us. The Trojan fleet's commander, Captain Maya Patel, broadcast on all frequencies. Zrixian vessels, this is the Earth Defense Force. We request peaceful passage through this sector. Her voice carried just the right note of uncertainty, playing to Imperial expectations. Zelthor's response was predictable. Surrender your vessels or be destroyed. Your primitive designs cannot hope to match our power. His fleet moved into an attack formation specifically designed to overwhelm redundant systems, a formation that would prove worse than useless against what was coming. The battle began conventionally enough. The Zrixian fleet opened fire with their particle lances, expecting to quickly overwhelm what they thought were simple shields. Instead, their beams seemed to pass through the human vessels without effect. Impossible, Zelthor's sensor officer exclaimed. They're shields. They're not registering as shields at all. It's as if the energy is passing into another dimension. That was exactly what was happening. The Trojan ships' quantum-linked defensive systems didn't stop incoming attacks. They redirected them into subspace, where the energy was recycled to power their weapons. Each hit from the Zrixian fleet only made the human ships stronger. Now, Patel commanded, show them what these simple ships can really do. The Trojan fleet's response defied Imperial tactical doctrine in ways their distributed system ships never had. Instead of multiple weapon systems firing independently, each human vessel became a weapon unto itself. Their hulls began to glow with accumulated energy, the very structure of each ship channeling power in ways Zrixian sensors couldn't comprehend. The first shot from a Trojan ship didn't come from a conventional weapon mount. The entire vessel pulsed, releasing a quantum tunneling wave that passed through Zrixian shields as if they didn't exist. 3 Imperial cruisers simply ceased to exist, their crystalline structures collapsing into quantum uncertainty. Status report, Zelthor demanded, his compound eyes struggling to process what he was seeing. Sir, these aren't primitive vessels, his science officer realized too late. They're more advanced than anything we've encountered. Their entire hull structure appears to be one integrated quantum system. We're not fighting ships. We're fighting contained quantum events. The battle turned into a rout. The Trojan fleet moved with perfect coordination, their seemingly simple designs concealing technology that made their previous advantages in redundancy seem crude by comparison. When Zrixian ships attempted to target non-existent power cores, they found their weapons feeding energy directly into the humans' quantum network. A valuable lesson, Patel broadcasted as the last Imperial vessels retreated in disarray, about assuming your enemy will always fight the same way. Humanity didn't survive and thrive by being predictable. The implications of Operation Checkmate rippled through the galaxy. The Zrixian Empire, which had just begun to adapt to human distributed engineering, now faced a foe that had already moved beyond that paradigm. Their entire defensive doctrine, evolved over millennia and recently updated to counter human redundancy, was obsolete before it was fully implemented. In the aftermath, Admiral Santos addressed the Earth Fleet Command again. The success of Operation Checkmate isn't just military. We've demonstrated that human engineering isn't about specific techniques or systems. It's about the philosophy of adaptation itself. While the Empire was learning to counter our old advantages, we were developing new ones. The Trojan-class ships represented more than just a tactical victory. They were proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in redundant systems or distributed power networks. It was in the ability to constantly evolve, to challenge assumptions, and to turn apparent simplicity into an overwhelming advantage. As news of the battle spread, a new saying began circulating among alien military analysts. Beware of human ships that look simple. They're either lying, or they're about to teach you something uncomfortable about the nature of technology itself. 6 months after Operation Checkmate, The grand chamber of the Galactic Conclave hummed with activity. Representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to witness something unprecedented: the formal dissolution of the Zrixian Empire's technological supremacy and the establishment of a new interstellar order. High Counselor Vexra, her crystalline form dimmed with acceptance rather than defeat, stood before the assembled species. Behind her, through the chamber's transparent dome, both Zrixian crystal ships and human vessels patrolled in joint formation, their contrasting designs a visual representation of the changes sweeping through known space. For 10,000 years, she began, her harmonics carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. The Zrixian Empire claims superiority through technological elegance. We believe that perfection lay in simplicity, in singular solutions to complex problems. We were wrong. Dr. Sarah Chen, now Earth's ambassador to the Conclave, watched from her position near the central podium. Beside her sat Professor Ixel, whose new wave engineering movement had helped bridge the gap between human and Zrixian approaches to technology. But our error, Vexra continued, wasn't just in our engineering philosophy. It was in believing that any single approach, any one species solution, could represent the peak of technological achievement. The humans didn't just prove our designs flawed. They showed us that true advancement comes from adaptation and synthesis. The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing the evolution of spacecraft design over the past year. Traditional Zrixian crystal ships flowed into hybrid designs, then into entirely new configurations that combined principles from dozens of species. The latest vessels incorporated everything from human quantum engineering to Andorian atmospheric systems to Valaxian weapon arrays. Admiral Helena Santos, representing Earth's military interests, stepped forward to join Vexra at the podium. "What we've achieved isn't the replacement of one doctrine with another," she declared. "It's the recognition that space technology must be as diverse as the species that use it." The new Galactic Technical Exchange Program was formally inaugurated, replacing the old imperial standards. Under its framework, every species would contribute its unique perspectives and solutions to a shared pool of knowledge. The Zrixian Empire's vast engineering databases, once jealously guarded, would be open to all member worlds. But perhaps most importantly, Professor Ixel addressed the chamber. "We've learned that innovation doesn't mean abandoning our heritage. Look at our new ships. They preserve the beauty of crystal engineering while incorporating redundancy. They maintain quantum efficiency while embracing adaptation." The implications extended far beyond shipbuilding. Across the galaxy, species began re-examining their own technological foundations. The Rigelians discovered that their biological computing could be enhanced by human-inspired distributed processing. Valaxian energy weapons achieved new levels of power by incorporating crystalline focusing arrays. Commander Chen, watching from Earth's orbital command, saw the first graduates of the new Multi-Species Engineering Academy departing for their assignments. Young engineers from every corner of known space, trained in principles that transcended any single world's doctrine. The true revolution, Ambassador Chen told the Conclave, isn't in any particular technology. It's in accepting that every problem has multiple solutions, that every species approach has value, and that true advancement comes from synthesis rather than supremacy. The formal signing of the Technology Sharing Accords marked the beginning of a new era. The document, written in every known language, enshrined the principles that humanity had demonstrated: adaptation over rigidity, diversity over uniformity, and cooperation over competition. High Counselor Vexra, in what would become a historic moment, turned to Ambassador Chen before the assembled representatives. "When we first encountered human ships, we dismissed them as primitive because they didn't match our understanding of elegance. We failed to realize that true elegance lies not in simplicity, but in survival, adaptation, and growth." As the ceremony concluded, a new vessel made its debut in orbit. The Harmony of Stars represented the first true collaboration between all major spacefaring species. Its crystalline hull housed quantum-linked systems, Its distributed power grid incorporated biological computing. Its adaptive shield technology drew from a dozen different engineering philosophies. The ship wasn't human, wasn't Srixian, wasn't any single species creation. It represented something new, the beginning of a truly galactic civilization where technology evolved through cooperation rather than competition. In the decades that followed, historians would mark this moment as the true beginning of the galaxy's golden age, the day when the last empire of technological supremacy gave way to an era of shared innovation and growth, all because humanity had arrived with ships that dared to be different, and the wisdom to share rather than dominate. As the Harmony of Stars began its maiden voyage, carrying representatives from every member world, a message was transmitted across all frequencies in all languages. Let this journey represent our shared future, where every species contributes, every perspective matters, and innovation knows no bounds. The age of singular doctrine was over. The age of infinite possibility had begun.